Well, hi, you guys. Thank you for joining in today for this month's expert series talks. Today we have Jonathan Reinig, who has a bachelor's in science and biology with an emphasis on evolution and ecology from the University of California, Davis. He has spent the past 14 years working with the Southern Riverside County Multiple Species Habitat Conservation Plan, first as a field biologist for its monitoring program, then later as a natural resource specialist, and most recently as the natural resource management for its land management program. During his tenure, he has been lucky to work with many of Southern California's rare species. Although lately, this mostly means protecting them from the planet's most successful species, including us humans. So with that, I will let Jonathan take the lead.
Okay, let's try this again. Can everybody see the presentation?
No, not yet.
Okay, let's see here.
Now we can see it, yes.
There we go. Okay, thank you, Anita. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. It's going to become very apparent that what I am not an expert in.
Sorry, Jonathan. Just to let you know, I see the PowerPoint slides.
Well, how'd that happen? You were seeing the presentation view before, right?
No.
All right, so it's not in presenter view right now?
No.
But you can't see the PowerPoint screen.
I could see the PowerPoint screen, but it's not the like the view. It's not the full screen.
Huh. But you saw the full screen earlier when we were trying it, right?
While we were testing it, yes.
Okay. I'm gonna try to stop sharing. I'm gonna try to start sharing again, see if it makes a difference. All right, let's try it this way. How about now?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, very good. Thank you again, everybody, for coming. I will be telling you guys about the Western Riverside County Multi-Species Habitat Conservation Plan. And when Anita asked me to give this talk, I was kind of torn about talking about like a specific project or species that we work with, or giving more a 10,000 foot overview of everything. And I ultimately decided to give a more of an overview about the plan and the work that we do within the plan. Mostly because I thought people might be interested, maybe not very familiar with habitat conservation plans or our habitat conservation plan. And also because I just wanted a little bit of a reason to brag about all the hard work we do in the name of conservation, because I don't get to do it nearly enough. So I hope that's all right with everybody. Just kind of an outline of what this presentation will cover. I'll do a kind of a brief overview of what a habitat conservation plan is. I will give an overview more specifically about the Western Riverside County Multi-Species Habitat Conservation Plan, which is a mouthful, and that I will refer to in here and after as just the MSHCP. And then I'll kind of delve more deeply into what my team does, and kind of across the board, especially with kind of more of an emphasis on the recent years. So first, what is a habitat conservation plan? The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says that a habitat conservation plan is a planning document designed to accommodate economic development to the extent possible by authorizing the limited and unintentional take of a listed species when it occurs incidental to otherwise lawful activities. The plan is designed not only to help landowners and communities, but also to provide long-term benefits to species and their habitats. Okay, I promise that will be the one and only thing I read verbatim off of my slides. And in fact, I don't have a whole lot of text in this whole presentation. But so basically what that means is habitat conservation plans and related natural community conservation plans are ways to enforce the Endangered Species Act on more of a regional and holistic scale, as opposed to on a more like project by project basis. So in California, there's a couple dozen habitat conservation plans, and we are. Oops, sorry. The Western Riverside County MSHEP is kind of this beige color right here. And we'll get in a little bit more. It's kind of worth noting that habitat conservation plans are a tool that have conserved tens of thousands of acres and have helped save countless organisms. But it's by no means like an end-all solution or in many people's views like the best possible thing. So this cartoon here kind of depicts it well from a staunch environmentalist point of view. And that, yeah, sure, habitat conservation plans are saving some stuff, but they're allowing for the wholesale slaughter of other stuff. So I'll hear it sometimes from people in like the more of a conservation environmentalist field that we're not doing nearly enough. And I'll hear from people in more of the development and recreation world that we're being way too restrictive. And the way I look at it is if nobody's happy, it's probably a sign of a good compromise. The Western Riverside County MSHEP covers 1.26 million acres. That's the entire plan area. That's the area that's outlined in red. In the west, it's the Santa Ana Mountains. In the east, it's the San Jacinto Mountains. In the north, it goes up to the San Bernardino National Forest and Riverside. And in the south, Temecula and the north slopes of Palomar Mountain. Western Riverside County, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, is home to like a really diverse range of habitats and ecosystems, muchly owing to its varying topography. So there's things like endemic alkali vernal playa habitats that have high levels of plant endosism and numerous sensitive species, particularly of plants. Ample grasslands and some oak savannas, conifer mountainous habitats, desert transition habitats where you get a lot of desert species kind of intermixing with more coastal species, obviously wetlands and riparian habitats and vernal pools, and a fair share of coastal sage scrub habitats. Because of this like varying such a wide variety of habitat types, coupled with the developmental pressures in Western Riverside County and in the developmental pressures that have happened in the past and continue to this day in surrounding areas, Western Riverside County has a high level of listed species. So there's 35 species of either federally or state listed threatened or endangered species. So in the early 2000s, or sorry, late 90s and early 2000s, the MSHEP was conceived and drafted and began to be implemented. This is kind of a schematic map from early on when the plan was being drafted. And at the time, so this is in the late 1990s, Western Riverside County had 350,000 acres of already conserved lands. So that's all the dark green on this map. It's mostly national forest, but also some state lands, an older habitat conservation plan that was just for a Stevens kangaroo rat. And what the plan aimed to do was conserve another 150,000 acres to create big, large blocks of new conserved habitat but also to create a series of linkages and corridors to connect all this otherwise kind of fragmented habitat, or what would become fragmented habitat. To accomplish this, once again, this was in the early 2000s, much of the county had restrictions put on development. So they developed this thing called a criteria cell. In these criteria cells, development is heavily restricted. Single family homes and maybe some commercial development, but only really under like really strict guidance. The trade-off is that outside of the criteria cells, it streamlines the development process. So instead of a project having to mitigate for impacts to listed species on a project-by-project basis, they sign into the plan and they pay a fee. They still have to mitigate and minimize for some species and take avoidance measures. But really, like, it's supposed to be a regional plan where it facilitates development, which in turn funds conservation. Yeah. So as I said, it was an ambitious plan with the amount of covered species that it had. So it has 146 covered species. I will not go through all of these, but these are mostly rare, threatened, endangered species, but also some like narrow range species, and also some species that were foreseen to potentially become listed or endangered in the future. So it kind of runs a gamut of the Southern California characters. We have a couple covered kangaroo rats, actually a few covered kangaroo rats, mountain lions, a lot of the mesoconifers, flying squirrel, arroyo toad, horned lizard, California newt, granite night lizards, red diamond rattlesnake, mountain king snake, some fairy shrimp. We have a few very narrowly restricted fairy shrimp. Some insects like the Kino checkler spot butterfly, a lot of the charismatic birds and familiar birds like bald eagles and leaf-billed vireo, gnatcatcher. Yeah, it goes on and on. There's about as many covered plants as there is covered mammals. I am not a great plant person, so I'll just kind of point out a couple of like the pretty ones. Intermediate Mariposa lily, lemon lily. Brand's Phacelia is a very rare plant. Davidson salt skill is actually an extremely rare plant. We have a population that we found a couple years ago on one of our property that's 28 individuals, and that is about a quarter of the global known population of that plant. Munz's onion, some spine flowers, yeah, some pretty cool plants. There's also some trees and shrubs in there as well. So when the plan was enacted in the early 2000s, the Regional Conservation Authority was formed. The RCA is a county entity that is responsible for administering the plan. So they review development projects to make sure that the developments are compliant with the plan. They collect fees. They purchase land, and they also contract for the monitoring of the covered species through the Biological Monitoring Program, which is housed in a nonprofit called the Santa Ana Watershed. They get to do all kinds of cool work, surveying for all the species with various cool survey designs. I'm not going to dive into that now. I will dive more into what we do, which is the reserve management, and the RCA contracts with Riverside County Parks for reserve management. So I work for Riverside County Parks. So after 20 years, this is what we're looking like in Western Riverside County. So all the dark green land, same thing, that was the existing conserved land in the early 2000s. All the light green land is land that has been put into conservation since that time. And to date, it's at about 70,000 acres. So it's almost halfway to fulfilling the goal of the plan to conserve 150,000 additional acres. A chunk of that is estate. A chunk of that is some smaller conservation groups that buy lands and manage them under MOUs with the Regional Conservation Authority. But about 48,000 acres of that land is what me and my team are responsible for. I do think I was actually just punched the numbers a little bit ago. Some of you have probably heard of this like global 30 by 30 initiative, where many world governments have come together and have pledged to conserve 30% of land and ocean cover by 2030. Western Riverside County is already at that mark, which is fantastic. And there's still tens of thousands of acres of land to go. So the RCA acquires on average about 2,000 acres of land per year. Okay, so now I'm going to dive more into specifically what my group does with Riverside County Parks, and the kind of the structure, the way we're laid out and kind of view the type of work that we do is we have a kind of a patrol and enforcement type tasks and branch, and those duties are mostly handled by one ranger supervisor who oversees three rangers. We have more of our maintenance arm, which is headed by one maintenance supervisor and 3 maintenance workers. And then we have more of our habitat and species management arm, which is spearheaded by 2 natural resource specialists, and obviously I'm in there too. I'm not accounted for here. While these different like groups of people kind of have their main tasks, we all work on various projects. So sometimes my biologist will be out picking up trash, or my rangers will be spraying herbicide to knock out non-native weeds. So it's a lot of variety. And now I'll dive even deeper into each one of these branches. So the patrol and enforcement, kind of some of the glamorous stuff. One of our biggest issues is off-highway vehicles. Western Riverside County has like a long historical like heritage of off-highway vehicle riders, and it makes it hard to preclude them from our properties because we have such a high boundary to area ratio. You know, you guys saw that map. There's a lot of different parcels that are scattered all throughout the area. And as the reserves grow and we're able to make those more contiguous, it'll help a lot with being able to kind of lock those properties down. So the properties that are being conserved under the plan, they are open to the public in general for passive recreation, things like mountain biking and hiking and bird watching, equestrian. But that's really it. There's a lot of unauthorized use, such as off-highway vehicles that aren't compatible with the goal of protecting endangered species. So my rangers spend a lot of time chasing after these guys. I think last year we contacted about 320 OHV riders, either on conserved lands or approaching conserved lands. We mostly make contact with these guys. We educate them about what the plan does, about the conserved land in the area, where the property boundaries are. Sometimes we'll inform them where they can ride. And we often, like, as we're parting ways, we're like, oh yeah, how do you guys get into this property? And they'll point like, oh, we came over that ridge, over that trail, and we'll know exactly where we need to go block the access off. So that's a little trick of the trade. Sometimes with particularly egregious repeated offenders, we are successful with getting law enforcement to come out and arrest people for trespassing, but that's kind of the exception, not the rule. Kind of related with OHV riding is fence breaks. So one of our best tools to keeping riders off of conserved lands is through fencing and other access controls. And they're constantly cutting their way in, and my guys are constantly cutting them out. So we repair probably around 150 fence breaks per year. Similarly, about 100 breach gates per year. Many of these are people that are looking to go OHVing, but also other nefarious activities where they want to go somewhere secluded. Sometimes when I get kind of down, reading a weekly report about all the yahoos out there messing up their conserved lands, what I like to do is come in and look at some historical satellite imagery and it makes me feel better. So this is a property that we have in Lake Elsinore. This is what that property looked like in 2005, and we acquired it in 2006. So we worked to preclude riders there, and we're contacting them and pushing them out. And this is what that property looks like now. You can see there's a pretty stark difference. Most of those OHV trails have grown in. We've done a pretty good job at keeping out the vast majority of the riders there. Here's another area that's not far away. This was what the property looked like before we got it in 2009. And this is what it looks like today. You can see a lot of those OHV trails disappearing and converting back to natural habitat. You'll also see where it not converting back to natural habitat and this private property over here, which is still a well-run, well-ridden track. And in fact, the spot that we repair fences pretty regularly is right in here where they try to cut their way in. Moving on, another task that my rangers are dealing with on a very regular basis is unhoused individuals. It's a widespread problem everywhere that's gotten worse as time passes, and it's complicated because these are people that are oftentimes down and out on their luck. There's a lot of humanitarian issues, but our mandate is to protect the habitat, and we take that pretty seriously. So we're constantly working to not let homeless encampments form on our property. You can see there's issues that come along with them often, like all the spilled oil outside of this, or sewage lines coming out of motorhomes, massive amounts of trash that pile up. So we take a pretty light hand to address these camps. We'll always go in and first offer services like, hey, do you need help? Do you need like a bed to spend the night in? And those are sometimes accepted, but most of the time, most of these people aren't interested in services, at least not at this time. And once they convey that, they're like, no, they're content to just sleep in a tent or in their car. We say, all right, well, unfortunately, you can't do that. You can't do that here. So we'll after offering services, we'll give them a notice to vacate the property. It's a 2-week notice. We're very flexible with that if people need more time, and they often do if the camp had become entrenched. So sometimes we'll work with them for up to a couple months to allow them to gather their stuff and find another place to go to. And then once those sites are gone, they almost always look like this. Last year, we ended up cleaning up about 4.5 tons of trash that was associated with homeless encampments. And that was just the stuff they left behind after they left the property. And kind of some before and afters of what those sites looked like before we cleaned them up and after we cleaned them up. Once we know spots that are popular for people to set up camp in, we like I said, we try to be really proactive of it and catch people really quickly after they get out there, before they get entrenched, before they get comfortable, before they move in these tons of trash. But it's a never-ending struggle. In recent years, we've had a huge uptick in mountain bike riding problems. So as I said before, our properties are open to mountain bike riding, but what they're not allowed to do is construct trails on our lands. So I'm going to toggle back and forth a few times. You can see those red circled areas. If you focus on one of those, in 2020, there's a couple trails there. In 2023, they're springing up all over the place. This is happening all across Western Riverside County, all across Southern California. In fact, I think probably all across the country. The popularity of mountain biking has exploded in recent years, and many of these riders are hungry to make the next great riding spot, and we're hungry to say no, you can't do that. It's extremely destructive. A lot of people are kind of under the assumption like, oh, it's just kids out there having fun and cutting some trails. What's the big deal? It's usually not. It's usually actually a bunch of grown ass men that are gung ho. They live the mountain bike life. They're passionate about it, and they'll go through great work to make very elaborate trails. They'll haul in wooden structures. They'll fill hundreds of sandbags and build big earthen features. It's very destructive to habitat. They're often punching into relatively pristine habitat and therefore like fragmenting it, at least on a localized scale, and disturbing disturbing species. So we're always after these guys. We have a couple mountain bikes, electric e-bikes that our rangers will patrol on, looking for new trails. We also scour satellite image pretty often to find these new trails. And once we find them, we start work on shutting them down. I think every year now for the past 5 years or so, we've closed somewhere between 1 and 6 miles of trails a year. I mean, these are all new trails that had been created like the year before or within a couple of years. So we'll go out and we'll remove trail infrastructure. So before we go out, sometimes we'll work with the mountain bike community either through organized groups or just making a really strong presence and let the local riders know that these new trails are not allowed and that they're slated for closure. Once the word kind of gets out, we'll go out and remove the trail infrastructure, empty sandbags, remove features, place big rocks back in place that retaining walls were built of. We'll sign and fence the heck out of all these trails. We almost always include like a custom letter on all those closed trails that explains exactly why the trails are being closed, exactly what the lands are for, what particularly sensitive species might be in the areas that are being adversely affected, and that seems to help a little bit. But still, there's almost always pushback when we do these trail closures, even when that trail was 1 year old and it was cut through pristine habitat in areas that they knew were conserved. So we always have to follow up by continually patrolling, continually closing fences, and making sure people aren't riding it. That picture on the bottom right is actually a guy riding on a trail that we had closed. Typically, after a year or two of really hammering them and driving the message home that they can't be creating these trails and expect to keep them, the trails will be abandoned and will start to recover. So yeah, that's kind of our method for dealing with mountain bike trail creation. Another issue that has grown a lot in recent years is trespass cannabis grows. So ironically enough, when marijuana was decriminalized in California, the penalties for cultivating it were diminished drastically, and the incentive to have an illicit grow went up a lot. You're basically, if you have an illicit grow, you're going to get slapped on the wrist. Most of these illicit grows are packing up all their product and shipping them out of state or even to Mexico. And they pose particular problems for us for a number of reasons. One, they clear a bunch of habitat just outright. That's bad in itself. Oftentimes, I'm sure this can be kind of hard to see here, but we have a grow site here, a water tank here that was placed inside of the property boundary. This is emanating from this private property. We don't have any access from over here. It's blocked by private property. This is like a very remote corner of one of our properties, but it's literally the backyard of this person that's piping water out and then growing it. Similarly, here's another one that happened recently. A very remote corner of a property for us, but literally the backyard of some private property owners, and they punched a road in and built a greenhouse. Some years there's thousands of plants that end up on our properties. We are not the ones that typically bust them up, although we have a couple small ones. More we report these to law enforcement. And more recently, there's a relatively new group in California Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's the Cannabis Enforcement Program. And there's dedicated wardens that are funded through cannabis taxes that sole job is to go out and bust up these trespass grows. And in very recent years, they've been awesome. And we've been relying on them a lot and have even kind of built up some partnerships. So typically when a grow is busted, what we would like to do is go in and clean it up. Massive amounts of trash and irrigation line get brought in with these. Almost every single one of these grows will have banned pesticides in them. Carbofuran is a common one. It's banned in California. It's still legal in other places, and it's imported. And they'll use it off-label to poison animals like rabbits and deer. And it's extremely toxic. A rabbit will go. Something like this has been documented, where a rabbit will eat some carbofuran, go off and die, and then a coyote will eat that rabbit. It will go and die. And then the eagle will come and forage on that coyote carcass, and it will go and die. So this is really nasty stuff. So yeah, most recently we've had some good luck working with the cannabis enforcement program to where we'll report a grow to them. They'll let us know when they're going to bust it. Their job is to go in and eradicate the plants and try to make some arrests. But they've been helping us a lot with actually cleaning up some of these sites. In a recent one, we were out there hours after they cut out all the plants, and we were able to utilize their helicopter to haul out a bunch of trash to a dump trailer we had nearby. So it seems like we're getting a better grasp on this. It spiraled out of control really fast, and we're cleaning up several grows a year, but we still have a couple dozen backlogged grows that are out in remote areas that are still awaiting cleanup. And it'll be an ongoing struggle for sure for the foreseeable future. Some other kind of random stuff that we deal with on the patrol enforcement side is people that are encroach onto our properties. So we're picking up several people a year that have decided that, hey, they don't have enough land. They would like to encroach on our land and put some structures out there or just clear some vegetation. Sometimes our main goal is to get them to stop encroaching, so to get whatever activities happening to cease. We have been successful at getting some of these landowners to actually restore, or at least attempt to restore some of the impacted habitats that they cause when they encroach on our property. We recover a bunch of stolen vehicles every year. We had a very large, expensive stolen tractor that we got on one of our properties a little while ago. Some of you might be familiar with the Lake Elsinore Super Bloom. Much of that beautiful spectacle of nature occurs on lands that we manage and that are conserved under the plan. And all these people that are walking around out in there aren't supposed to be out there. That was right as the ranger was showing up, and they were all shoved off. It's kind of a nightmare. For a couple years, everybody thought it was a good idea to try to facilitate people so they could come out and enjoy it. But it's gotten so out of control with impacts to nature and impacts to local residents that the past couple years, everyone just said, no, if this happens, it gets shut down. So the last time this happened, which was last year, the whole area was actually closed down and no one was allowed to visit it, which is obviously a shame for that people can't go out and enjoy something that's so beautiful, but it's often a case of them loving it to death and just destroying things. So I've been happy to see it close down, at least until we can get our bearings straight and figure out how we can manage such an influx of people. I think on the busiest weekend in 2019, when it was a really great year, they were saying it was tens of thousands of people. They said more people were going to see these poppies than were going to Disneyland. We get quite a few target shooters out on the properties and some hunters. A lot of education can go a long way with them. Trash dumpers. We've been pretty successful at catching people at dumping in the act and making them pick up all their stuff and take it to the dump. Or sometimes even we'll find contact information, addresses, and mail in dump piles. And there's been a number of times where we'll go knock on somebody's door and be like, "Hey, go pick up your pile of trash that's out in the field over there." And we have pretty good luck with that, and obviously get a good chuckle when that happens. Okay, moving on to kind of the more maintenance side of things. I've already talked about kind of fences and access controls quite a bit. So we're constantly trying to what we call button up our properties. There's so many of them, and we get so many of them every year. There's no way we can fence them all, and nor does that make sense all the time if in a growing reserve system to fence something that someday soon will have more land around it. So we're pretty strategic with where we do our fencing, to really surgically go in and block specific unauthorized access. Still, we put in 1 to 3 miles of new fencing every year. Similarly, we like to, a lot of times we would like to access these properties with vehicles. So we put in somewhere around 10 new gates a year. A lot of times, kind of a common thing that will happen is we'll get a new property. There'll be a lot of unauthorized access, and we'll go in and we'll fence it off and block it all off. And we're all happy. We think the job's done. And then the local equestrian group comes in and starts yelling at us because we blocked their access onto their riding trails that they were riding on private property before. So we try to facilitate them. We'll do things like horse step overs and walkthroughs to try to allow for that passive recreation, which is allowed on the land, but preclude that harmful unauthorized access. It's a constant push and pull sometimes. Picking up trash is another big part of what the maintenance guys do a lot. And as we get more land, it seems to be more issues. A lot of times the trash comes with the new property. Sometimes it's people dumping off on rural roads. Last year we had a record year of trash pickup. We picked up 27 tons of trash that was dumped out on the landscape, which is mind-boggling to think about. Sometimes, like that bottom right picture, it's throwing down steep hillsides, and we have to actually like hoist this stuff up out. Weed abatement is something that also consumes a lot of the maintenance crew's time. It's something that we take very seriously. So this is knocking down dead annual vegetation for fire fuels reduction, basically. Oftentimes it's along roadways where we will knock back vegetation for multiple reasons. One, so that if a car is driving down the road and they flick out a cigarette or they're dragging a chain, there's a much less chance that spark will catch something on fire and spread out into the landscape. But it can also serve as a way to make a fuel break across the landscape and provide a safer way for responding agencies to fight the fires. So if a fire is moving through the landscape and it comes across and it has a big area devoid of nature or devoid of vegetation, it's less likely to continue on the other side. We also spend a lot of time clearing away vegetation on our properties for neighboring private properties, which can be frustrating sometimes. In Riverside County now, local ordinances have it so that if a new development goes in, they have to incorporate a defensible space within the development, so that the houses aren't butted up against natural habitat. They have a nice buffer between them. But there's a lot of legacy developments throughout Western Riverside County where that wasn't the case. Houses were allowed to be built up right next to land that then came into conservation. And if a fire starts in here, sometimes it can be feet from the back of these people's houses. So we spend quite a bit of time going in and on an annual basis and pushing back annual vegetation from neighboring private structures. That season's right around the corner. We're gearing up for it. Kind of random stuff that just comes up throughout the course of work too. We have many miles of dirt roads that get issues, that wash out, that have to be graded and repaired and whatnot. Hazmat dumping, somebody dumping a big thing of used motor oil that spills out all over the place, which requires very expensive and tedious cleanups. Covering up graffiti. One thing that's always been a pet peeve of mine is in places where graffiti is happening on natural objects like rocks, and whatever land managing entity will come in and paint over it. And it drives me nuts. It seems totally counterproductive. So I have much to the chagrin of some of my staff, I don't allow for painting over graffiti on natural objects. That graffiti's got to be removed. Either it's got to be pressure washed off or sandblasted or ground off. I don't want more paint going in there. And I often think sometimes that if there's a nice brown paint square there, it's almost an invitation for people to come graffiti over it. We close off a lot of wells, abandoned wells, and abandoned mines. The mines are mostly to protect people. But wells, this was one that we found way out in the secluded canyon that was literally flush with the ground. It was a 25-foot drop down vertical concrete walls. There was water in the bottom of it. I imagine there was dozens of deceased animals down at the bottom of that well, like a terrible trap for animals. So like we're very interested in mitigating those issues. So we cover them up as we can. We also get some properties here and there that have old dilapidated structures on it, so we get to demo some buildings sometimes, which can be pretty fun. Southern California, no one's surprised that there's a lot of fires, and they affect us every year, and we spend a fair bit of time doing what we can. They're often such large landscape scale events that we're pretty limited with what we can meaningfully do, but we still try. So early on in the events, and this is kind of a strategy that we've developed over the years. The first thing we do when a fire starts is we deploy staff to the area to go and start opening up gates as safely as possible. This facilitates the responding agencies. Not that the gates will necessarily slow them down; they'll plow right through them with bulldozers and whatnot. But it does help them a little bit. But it also saves us a lot of money in the long run, and it also helps us with securing the properties after the fires have stopped to be able to go out and actually close the gates instead of having to replace them outright. Another thing that we try to do is we've gone through and mapped areas all across our conserved lands that have species that would be adversely affected by not the fire itself, but by the suppression of the fire. I don't know. Hopefully you guys can see this pretty well. So here's a bunch of our conserved land, and on this land we have these cross-hashed polygons on them. So these are spots where there's species like phosphoral mammals, a guanga kangaroo rat in this particular instance, as well as some plants, some fire adapted plants like rare manzanitases, any vernal pool structure or complexes that would be much better off if a fire just passed through their habitat, as opposed to bulldozers going through and trying to get out in front of it and stop it. So we try to be very proactive and reach out like in the minutes after a fire starts to let the responding agencies like, hey, there's these particular sensitive habitats. Like, can you not destroy these with bulldozers as the fire is moving through? They usually don't listen to us, but we try. Obviously these are rapidly moving events oftentimes, and there's often life and property on the line. And one of the last things that the responding agencies care about is the endangered kangaroo rat that's living out there. But we still try, and we have been successful sometimes getting protecting these areas from suppression activities. So we try that every time. Immediately after the fire is over, we'll work with suppression repair crews who go in and try to repair the damage that was done. So they'll drag soil back in, topsoil back in onto the dozer lines that was cleared off, and they'll put water bars in. We often request that they really kind of chunk up the dozer lines on the boundaries of our properties, so that as vegetation grows back in, there isn't like a highway for cars or dirt bikes to come in. We work to secure our properties. A lot of times, we don't have access controls everywhere. A lot of times these properties are guarded by dense chaparral, and when a fire goes through, they're basically wide open for anybody to drive in and do whatever they want. So we often have to install some new fencing and repair stuff that was damaged during the fire, and we temporarily close all of our properties after they burned, typically for a period of 2 years to allow them time to naturally rehabilitate without having new trails forming and non-native species seeds dropping in. We'll then kind of go on to document impacts that were done to species and habitats, which can oftentimes be depressing when you're finding dead, burnt up animals out there. That's a horned lizard that didn't make it in the bottom right. And then as time progresses, we'll try to help the habitat as we can. As I said earlier, this is oftentimes there are thousands of acres that are burning. There's no way we can do huge, large scale landscape work in the burn scar. So we're pretty strategic. We focus on really rare species that might have been impacted. So these pictures on the left, this was a fire that happened a couple years ago, and it burned Kino checker spot butterfly habitat. And our main worry was that before the fire, there was relatively high diversity of native annual forbs. And often what happens after a fire is habitats will type convert to non-native grasses. So we did some experimental plots with some various grass-specific herbicides to make sure that they didn't affect the host plants of the butterflies, and they did not. So we were able to treat some acreages out there with grass-specific herbicides to knock back the grasses, allow the natives to kind of come in and hopefully help that species. We'll also go out and assault particularly invasive weeds We'll focus on dozer lines and access roads that vehicles might have shed seeds off of them and brought new non-native species into areas. So we're kind of going in and scalping particularly noxious weeds. And then also some other stuff. This was the stuff on the right was a fire that happened actually last year. It burnt up some good cactus wren habitat. So we salvaged a bunch of cactus that was damaged in suppression activities and also just cut a lot of fresh cane and went out and planted hundreds of cactus cuttings out to try to encourage that cactus wren habitat to bounce back a little faster. Beyond fires, we do a fair bit of weed control across the board. These range from long-term management of. I'm so busy talking, I didn't realize my light even turned off. This ranges from long-term management of former mitigation sites that had been signed off and were good to go, but we try to keep them in good conditions and control non-native weeds from reinvading in them. It also involves targeting new non-native weeds spreading out across the landscape or in-house restorations. To that end, we have a small greenhouse that we propagate plants from native seeds and we'll use to bolster some kind of small scale in-house restorations, typically coastal sage scrub, some other stuff in there too, rare plants and some riparian stuff. Kind of along that same vein, we out in this habitat that I alluded to earlier, the alkali vernal playas that are in the humid area. It's a very alkaline soil. There's some endemic plants and there's some listed plants. Case in point is over here. You have two plants here. You have a federally listed San Jacinto crown scale, and growing amongst it is stinknet, which is a very noxious weed that is kind of rapidly spreading across our area. And in this picture, all this dead stuff, most of this dead stuff you see in here is actually stinknet that has already dried up. So we're very interested in like how do we treat this very aggressive weed that is growing amongst a bunch of sensitive and endemic species. So this was actually kind of a fun herbicide control experiment that we've ran for several years, really trying to figure out a concoction of taxus specific herbicides that we could spray that would kill the grass and kill this non-native aster, but leave native plants untouched. And we actually did find a pretty good concoction and in the right timing to where we started to use this aster specific herbicide with a grass specific pre-emergent right in the beginning of the growing season, and we started spreading that out into some larger areas, and the hopes are to be able to treat some kind of wide swaths of land with this technique in the future. Burrowing owl is a charismatic species that gets a whole lot of attention because of it. So we spend a fair bit of time working with this guy. And it's kind of all across the board. So we have 3 different colonies of burrowing owls that have a total of about 70 artificial burrows. So we build the artificial burrows and install them. We have to maintain those burrows, so they'll often get packed full of soil by phosphoral mammals. We have to control the vegetation at these sites with string trimming and grazing and tractor mowing. We monitor the nests on our properties using game cameras to make sure to monitor the population statuses. And we also have been involved with numerous translocations where owls that are on land that is going to be developed are actually actively translocated to RCA conserved land. They're put in hacking enclosures for a short period of time, typically during the breeding season. So they'll lay eggs in those enclosures, and then the enclosures come down, and the owls have a new place to live while their formal home turns into houses or warehouses. Western pond turtles is another species that we're particularly interested in. We have several waterways that have pond turtles. Some of them are doing well and are recruiting young turtles. But we also have some creeks that are very, very urban. We've been pretty heavily monitored for numbers of years and aren't recruiting turtles. So we would never see young turtles, young pond turtles in some of these urban waterways. And what's believed to be the reason why is that it's not that they're not reproducing, they're actually breeding, and the females are laying eggs, and oftentimes the eggs are hatching out. But when the teeny little hatchlings make it back to the water, what they encounter is a whole bunch of non-native aquatic invasive predators. Probably the worst of which would be bullfrog, but crayfish and sunfish and largemouth bass are in a lot of these waterways, and all potentially could be eating young turtles. So we do a fair bit of work every year to go out and try to knock back populations of these non-native predators. We'll seine and we'll electrofish for them. We'll shoot bullfrogs. We have no illusion that we'll ever get rid of these non-native species using these techniques, but the hope has always been that, hey, if we hit it hard enough, long enough, we might be able to reduce the density of these non-native aquatic predators to where maybe some young turtles will make it through, and those populations will have a chance of persisting more into the future. So after a number of years of doing this work, actually 2 years ago, we got our first young turtle in one of these creeks, and it was in Warm Springs Creek, which passes through Myriad and Temecula. One that no young turtles had been seen in for over a decade. And after treating non-native predators in that aquatic system, we caught this guy. He was 4 years old, and I like to think that maybe we had a little something to do with that. But even if we didn't, I was very happy to see this young turtle amongst a population of turtles that had seemed not to be recruiting young individuals at all. Spadefoots, we had a number of ephemeral pools that spadefoots would breed in, but they were not natural ephemeral pools. They were relic pools that were made from old industry or human activities. And although the spadefoots would go breed in them, even in wet years, those pools were drying up, and before the spadefoot tadpoles had a chance to metamorph. So we've done a couple different techniques. We've lined a pool with clay. We lined another pool with a plastic lining. This was probably about 6 and 4 years ago, and every year since then we've had really good luck with those pools filling up and retaining water for long periods of time, and are successfully pumping out juvenile metamorphed spadefoots, which is always good to see. This is one of my kind of pet projects that I've been working on and have spearheaded over the years, and it's working with the Delhi Sands flower-loving fly. It's a federally endangered fly, which some of you might be shaking your head as to why would that be a thing. I mean, if I had more time, I would try to make you fall in love with this fly, but he is a cool species that is very imperiled. There's estimated to be less than 500 of these flies in existence. They are obligatory sand dune inhabitants in the sense that they have a free living predaceous larva that lives in only these fine grained sands. This particular species was once found across 40 square miles in southern San Bernardino County and northern Riverside County, and almost all of that habitat has been lost to development. And this property, this one little canyon right here, this is about 10 acres. It's the last best stronghold for the fly. It's estimated to have about 30% of the population of this fly left in existence, and it falls under our purview to manage. So we've been working for years out there to try to help this organism. Its main threat is actually a type conversion of an open sand dune habitat to non-native grasslands, basically. So these were like a dynamic, wind-driven sand dune complex in historic times, but the source sands have since been covered up and paved over, and the sand dunes have stabilized and have inundated with non-native weeds. So early in our efforts, we spent a lot of time going out and raking up thatch, trucking it off of the property. Afterwards, weeding specific non-native plants that are coming back in. The the fly does need open sand habitat, and as we were getting a good grasp on the non-native plants and getting more and more native plants by transplanting and seeding, we still had to maintain this open sanding habitat, and we do that with a quad-drawn harrow that we'll drive out there every year to kind of create this mosaic of open sandy habitat and vegetation, which is what the fly needs. It's been pretty successful. Briefly, this map, what this map shows is over several years of survey efforts where we knew the fly emerged from the sand, so where its subterranean habitat was, and that's these purple squares, and then purple triangles. After a couple of years of managing this habitat pretty intensively and then surveying for it, we had them exploding all over the site in a lot of places that they had never emerged from the sand before, so we were very happy to see that. The numbers as well, we started managing here right around here. These are numbers that were determined through a pretty intensive monitoring of the species. And it seemed to, it's kind of variable before. There was a gap in survey years, and we started managing the habitat here, and it seems to be on an upward trend ever since, and we kind of see this anecdotally. So we're very happy to see that. What else? Just a bunch of random stuff. We have the first, and I think still only wildlife overcrossing in California, which connects one of our reserves that has a big highway or a big road that bisects it. This is down in Temecula. We're involved with that. We get to kind of manage and maintain some of the infrastructure associated with that. Out mowing for kangaroo rats, building bat structures, participating in various research projects that happen on our reserve lands, which is always really fun and interesting. This one in the bottom right was actually a San Diego Zoo study that was studying the efficacy of translocating San Bernardino kangaroo rats as a mitigation measure. So they trapped some in an area that was slated for development and moved them to our property and monitor them for a long period of time, and it seemed to be mildly successful. And then kind of finally, as I said, we're getting thousands of acres every year. My biologists spend a lot of time out hiking across properties that before we get them. So the RCA is working on acquiring a property. We'll go out and we'll do some like real basic biological inventory of the property, and we'll also look for any issues that might be on the property with the hopes that they can be addressed during the escrow process. And this kind of works really fun because oftentimes you're going to properties that had been in private holdings for a long time. Very few people have been on them. Oftentimes, like no biologists have been on them. So we always enjoy doing that. And with that, I do believe that was a overall summary of everything that we do. So thank you very much. I can take some questions if we have time. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, for that lovely talk. If you guys have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask them a question, or you guys are more than welcome to put it in the chat. There is one question already on the chat. So Inez was asking, what is the survey protocol like for the Delhi Sands flower loving fly? Is it similar to surveying for an endangered butterflies?
So it might be, but no, not at least for our endangered butterfly, and our endangered fly is very different. So the method that is used for the Delhi Sands flower loving fly is called a line distance transects. So basically there's transects that are set up through the habitat. People will walk along them slowly. They document every flylet they see. They measure the perpendicular distance from the transect to the first observation of the fly. And they repeat that all throughout the survey season. At the end of the season, what you end up with is kind of a bell curve of where the flies were observed in relation to the transect. And the assumption is that you'll see about 100% of the flies on the transect, and it'll taper off as you get further and further away from the transect. I'm using that numbers, and I am no statistician, and I don't punch these numbers, but there's methods that have been developed to where you can get estimates of population density based off of that.
Okay. Well, going off that question, I also had a question on the flies. do oh my God, I wrote it down. I can't find it. Okay. Do you guys plan on making the habitats for these flies like bigger? Because it looks like from the map that you guys are just restoring like a partial, like just a portion of that habitat. So are you guys thinking of expanding that habitat for them?
So kind of yes and no. The problem is they are, they can only inhabit this like real high quality sandy habitat. So in this picture, there's this whole big valley. Like, hey, let's make all this fly habitat. The only way that would be possible would be to import sand. Really, the only place that there is suitable habitat is kind of in this area right here. So no, we can't really expand on it because it's fundamentally limited by the substrate of the soil.
Okay, thank you. Sharon is asking, how is the organization funded? And her other question is there a natural predator for the bullfrogs that can help cut their population?
So the plan is funded. So when anybody develops in Western Riverside County, they pay a fee. The developers pay a fee. So that goes to the RCA, and it's for acquisition and management of the land. There's also, when the plan was enacted, there's a small fee that was placed on dump tip. It's called a dump tipping fee. So every time somebody goes to the dump, they pay a few cents. That goes into a fund that funds the plan. The natural predators of the bullfrog. We have some natural predators of bullfrogs, like a great blue heron, but they bullfrogs are generalists, and they're great at surviving. There's a reason why they're invasive over many parts of the world now, and it's a slippery slope to try to import a predator to control a non-native species. So that's certainly not in the question. So I guess no. That I think your best bet is to eradicate them. And with bullfrogs, you might have a chance of eradicating them out of certain watersheds depending on how it's structured. But it's kind of sad because Southern California was home to the red-legged frog, which was in part at least displaced by bullfrogs. So now that bullfrogs are here, we lost Southern California at least lost its population of red-legged frogs.
Okay. I know Daniela had a question regarding bullfrogs when you were talking about the eradication earlier. Do you guys use BB guns to eradicate them, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so we catch a lot of them with seine nets and when we're electroshocking, both adults and tadpoles. But then we also use pellet guns to hunt them, both at daytime and particularly at nighttime. It's pretty effective to go out and spotlight them and pop them with pellet guns. They are extremely hardy. It's amazing how hardy a bullfrog is. I won't get into gruesome, but they can take a beating and be just fine.
Good. Ines has another question. She is asking, for illegal trails, have camera trap cameras been considered to possibly identify repeat offenders for bigger fines, or do you think they should be ineffective?
No, it's a great idea, and I think that it could work well, and especially in conjunction with social media. People like brag. Like we often can go and identify the people building the trails by hashtagging the area that they're riding, and then finding videos of them illegally creating trails. The problem is there hasn't been a lot of political will to persecute people like that. One, I think it's law enforcement is just overwhelmed in general with a lot of serious crime. And the guy cutting a mountain bike trail, nobody really cares about. But also just kind of changing the way that district attorneys and law enforcement think about what we're doing and about the impacts. It's hard. So even if it's not IDing them isn't the problem. It's actually the kind of political will to punish them has been more of the problem.
Okay, thank you. I had a couple of questions. Since you guys were also studying like the burrowing owls, have you seen their numbers increase since you started creating those habitat the burrows for them?
Burrowing owls are seem to be very finicky, and you also really have to stay on top of managing their habitat. Like you can't let it get too covered in vegetation. They really like kind of open habitat with ample bare ground. So yes, in the sense that we've created new colonies, but we don't see like increasing populations, and it varies quite a bit, but it's pretty steady, and not in high numbers.
Okay. Sharon is asking, is this a popular career path for biologists slash environmentalists?
I don't know how much it is. It should be. But I think a lot of it is it's maybe not it's not super well known, that there's kind of like this that land reserve management is really being a thing. I think a lot of people think of biology and they think of like research and academia and the private sector. But you know, there is these habitat conservation plans all over the place, and in a broader sense, there's a lot of nonprofits that own and manage land and resource conservation districts. So I do think it's a definitely a viable career path for aspiring conservationists.
Awesome, thank you. So I know you were talking about like the turtles and their populations, and it wasn't until like recently that you actually captured like a youngling. Do you guys mark the turtles? So how often do you go out in surveys and like do you mark them just to see if you're catching the same ones over again? Like, or how do you distinguish one turtle from another?
Yeah. So we follow a USGS protocol and pit tag turtles, so they get like the same like microchip that a dog would get. And we do often recapture turtles. We also documented like some big movements of turtles, like moving several miles up or downstream and across like highways and stuff. To the monitoring end, we were paying a lot of attention to those turtles because it was kind of around the early 2010s, because it was new properties. Some of them had recreation on them, and we were concerned that recreation might have been interfering with breeding, or the recreation was occurring. So like we were pretty heavily monitoring them for like several years in a row, and then take a year break, and then throw some traps out again. So they were pretty heavily monitored. Towards the end of that, or more recently, like most of the turtles that we catch are recaptures. So we feel like we've sampled most of the population, and just never see like a baby turtle. Either like just opportunistically see it or catch it in a trap. So yeah, we're pretty confident, at least in that one waterway, that recruitment wasn't happening, or it's happening at like a super low level. And it probably honestly still is happening at a pretty low level, but at least it's happening.
Okay. Sharon is asking, is the organization taking undergrad students to work / volunteer?
We do take some volunteers. We've had problems with it in the past, in the sense that, like, you know, not a lot of the stuff that we do is glamorous, and a lot of it's just like outright unpleasant. So we're always open to it. If we have any person that's like dedicated and wants to come out and like learn the trade, we don't have a lot of time to like set up special projects for them to work on, but if they want to like come out and actually like help on existing projects, we're open for it. Maybe I should throw my email in the chat. I'm gonna have to exit out of this because I'm not sharing screens. I'll throw my email in the chat, and if anybody wants to reach out, they're more than welcome to.
Okay. While you are typing your email on the chat, I have another question for you. So after the fires that you guys have like in Riverside, I know you said that you do some planting to try to help recover some of the plants, especially for like endangered species in the areas. Do you guys also do mapping to look at the progress of how that vegetation is looking over time?
I would love to. No, not fine scale. We're spread pretty thin, and a lot of what we do is kind of reactionary, and we can't like do real deep dives into it. So no, other than for the most part, it's do it kind of qualitatively, figure out how well it's working, and then move on to the next thing. With some exceptions, but yeah, typically no, it's not real in-depth documentation after the fact.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. Do you guys have any other questions for Jonathan? Please feel free to put it on a chat, or you guys could unmute. Either one's fine.
Sorry, I have another question.
Go
Yeah.
for it.
Is there, going back to the bullfrogs, is there a way to like genetically modify like the males in particular to like prevent them from
like a gene drive on them?
Right. Which I
Uh,
feel like I've heard it being done before, but not particularly on bullfrogs.
Yeah, like they do gene drives on mosquitoes. I'm sure there's something, and like gene editing is is a blossoming field, and it's probably gonna change our world very rapidly. I'd be a little bit worried about it, just because there's kind of bullfrogs are native to the southeast, and I can kind of draw a line where it's continuous bullfrog habitat all the way there now. And if you were to create a gene drive in Southern California to extirpate bullfrogs here, you might just wipe them out altogether.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if there isn't any more questions for Jonathan, thank you so much for giving us oh wait, there's actually one more question. Is there a bullfrog hunting season for people interested in eating them?
Let me see. So we don't allow hunting or fishing on our lands. I'm sorry, there's some fishing. We don't allow hunting. We probably should for bullfrog. I would say that in some of the waterways that bullfrogs are an issue, and there's pond turtles, I wouldn't want to eat bullfrogs out of them. It's a lot of urban runoff. That's like the primary inflow is urban runoff. But in general, yes, there is. I think they're actually open season in areas that are open to taking bullfrogs.
What about crayfish?
Likewise, I've killed thousands and thousands of crayfish, and I've always been like, man, I'd love to have a crayfish boil, and I am not doing it with these crayfish because I don't need that heavy metal load or whatever toxins are in the water.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you so very much for giving us a little bit of information about everything that you do. It's definitely a lot of work, going from both the endangered species to management to looking at, trail maintenance. It's definitely a lot of work. So
really
thank
is.
you so much. Definitely got to learn a little bit more on what you do. And I hope you guys got to learn a little bit more. And so with that, thank you again for being here. And please feel free to look out for emails for our next expert series talk next month in May on the California leaf terms. And you guys, if you guys want more information on that, you guys could feel free to email me or just check out our social media. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I'll go ahead and put our social media in the chat in case you guys are interested as well. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me. Take care, guys.